Muscle fatigue occurs when the muscle cannot respond even when it is stimulated. Muscles need energy in order to be able to respond, and that energy has to be in the form of ATP. There are basically four sources of ATP in the muscle cell. A little bit of ATP is actually stored in the cell. Then we have energy stored in the form of the creatine phosphate molecule. This molecule can be broken down directly and form ATP. Anaerobic glycolysis is how the cell breaks down glucose to make a little bit of ATP. This happens when there is not sufficient oxygen present. And aerobic respiration is when oxygen is present and the maximum amount of ATP can be produced from glucose. If we look at how we need ATP, the first little bit of ATP that's stored in the muscle is used up very quickly in the first few seconds of activity. Then we can break down creatine phosphate and use that to make ATP. That stored molecule will provide us with about another 10 seconds of ATP use. If we have anaerobic conditions in the muscle, which we may have if the muscle starts contracting very suddenly before there's a good blood supply to the muscle, then the glycogen stored in the muscle is broken down to glucose, and this is used to make ATP. Under anaerobic conditions, we don't make a lot of ATP, enough maybe to fuel a minute or so of exercise. If, however, the muscles are allowed to warm up and a good blood supply comes into the muscles before we start heavily using them, then we have lots of oxygen available in the muscle. That oxygen will allow us to use aerobic respiration and make the maximum amount of ATP. If we are making ATP using aerobic respiration, we can go for several hours of activity. We can cause muscle fatigue to happen much quicker than it would normally. If there is unhampered blood flow to the muscle, then we're in aerobic respiration. But if we cut off the blood flow to the muscle, then we will make the muscle go into anaerobic respiration. One of the ways we can simulate this is by using a blood pressure cuff on the arm and cutting off the blood supply to the muscles of the lower arm. If we then have the person do something like squeeze a ball, they will very quickly be unable to squeeze the ball because they just won't have enough ATP to make all the cross bridges that they need to make for muscle contraction to occur. Most muscle fatigue is really psychological. You just don't feel like moving anymore. If we have true lack of ATP, the muscles would contract and be unable to relax because ATP is necessary to break the cross bridges. This would be a condition called contracture. This is sometimes what happens when a muscle cramps after you've used it for a long period of time.